Hi, I'm Shane with the Drum Center of Portsmouth in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We are on the web at drumcenter.com, and today we've got a real interesting video for you. We've got three of the most advanced, incredible drum sets that are available on the market today. And you're really not going to believe who makes them. It's Mapex. If you haven't clicked away yet, thanks. I think that you're going to find this video really informative, and I think you're going to be knocked out by what you're about to see and hear from Mapex. We are going to be featuring the Black Panther Design Lab series drum sets, and these are just absolutely incredible. Mapex is a relatively young brand. They were started in late 80s, but their parent company goes back to 1930, and they were actually building drums for other manufacturers on a private label basis before they decided to launch the brand Mapex in the late 80s. Many of you have probably heard me say before that I liken the drum industry to the car industry. Ludwig is your Ford, Gretsch is your Chrysler, DW is Cadillac, and your Burl and your Tama and Yamaha, that's Subaru, Nissan, Toyota. And Mapex is the Hyundai of the industry. If you remember in the 1980s, if you saw a car on fire on the side of the road, it was likely a Hyundai. And now they've launched their premier brand Genesis, and they're making the car of the year. So they kept getting better, they kept improving, and now they have a very viable brand. Well, the same can be said for Mapex. The drums in the very beginning were not incredibly desirable because what we saw were cheap drums. What is important to note is that they kept improving. And eventually they came out with the Orion series, and if there's anything that sticks out for me, it's those bird's eye maple Orions that they were offering in the late 90s. Those were absolutely stunning drums. This was at a time where you were not seeing a lot of exotic veneers on a drum set. Now DW and Sonar had sort of been doing that for a while, but to offer it on a production level drum set at a lower price, it wasn't as common back then, and these Orions really just popped. And I really love that slightly thicker shell. And these had a little bit more cut, they had a little bit more projection, and if you talk to people that played those drums, they really loved them, and still do. So something was happening even back then in the 90s. Granted, it was not a big impact, but for those who knew, they knew. And they built up quite the artist roster. They had people like Mike Portnoy, Ralph Peterson, Matt Sorum, Igor Cavalera, Terry Bozzio. They had some serious players, and they kept working. They kept developing new sounds and new innovations. I remember in particular, I think it was 2000 or 2001, they came out with the Deep Forest series. These were drum kits that were made entirely of cherry or entirely of walnut. And this was at a time, nobody was doing this. Around this time, it was really about maple drums. And so it was really nice to see that a company was coming out with some new voices and presenting some new options. Not long after that, we had a couple of very happy accidents that occurred. The Saturn series had been released in the 90s, and they were using blended woods, maple and mahogany or maple and basswood. But in the early 2000s, they landed on this magic combination of 4 plies of maple on the outside, 2 plies of walnut on the inside, and it just had that perfect amount of boom and tonality, and people just loved these drums. The biggest problem with all of this was that the Saturn drums had the same hardware on them as the Orion.
They're the same picture.
And they were priced a lot lower. And so a lot of people preferred the sound of the Saturns over the Orions. And so they were selling a lot more Saturns than Orions. And this was great in terms of getting the name out there, but it really kind of pushed that narrative of them being a value line and not a prestige manufacturer of drums. Another happy accident occurred. I think this was around 2005 or 6-ish. So this is how it used to go. The companies would come out with their price lists at NAMM, and we'd get them a hard copy of it. This was before we were sending PDFs via email and downloading from websites. And they made a mistake in their price list on the Studio Ease configuration. And that was a 10, 12, 14, 16 with a 22 and a snare. They had priced it lower than a 5-piece configuration. So it was a 6-piece kit that cost less than the 5-piece. You know, back then, you can't just make this quick correction because they've already sent out the price list to everybody. So they decided to honor that for the year. Well, what they found was that the Saturn sales went up 300%. And so all of a sudden, people were buying that kit, but they also found that they were buying other configurations too, and Saturn became one of the top-selling kits in its category, and nobody could really touch it. And all of a sudden, Mapex was everywhere. I think it was around 2008, 2009 that we started to see some real good hardware come from Mapex. They released the Falcon bass drum pedal, which is one of the best bass drum pedals out there, and then we saw the Falcon hardware, which was just absolutely killer. And then we started seeing some real R&D happening with the Black Panther drum sets. The Blaster drum kit, it was a thinner maple shell with a thicker walnut reinforcement ring and a very, very unique bearing edge. They were calling it a sound shaping process. All I could tell you is that the drums sounded really good. The Velvetone is another one. This was a thin walnut shell, but it had maple on the inside and the outside, and also its own unique bearing edge. And in 2018, the Design Lab was released. Now, this is where I start making that connection with Genesis, because these drums were just over the top. They wanted to improve every possible aspect of the acoustic drum. And the features that were released then, a lot of them you're seeing on the drums that we're going to show you today. We have 3 of these new Design Lab drum sets. And while they are all different from each other, they do have all of these very specific features that have been developed by the team at Mapex. The sonic pedestal foot, now they weren't the first ones to do that, but this really allowed a little bit more resonance out of your floor tom. And the attenuating floor tom leg, this concept allows you to sort of dial in the amount of resonance that you want without having to stick bubble gum or moon gel on your drum. The Sonic Clear bearing edge is something that they also came up with, and it allows the head to float a little bit more on the drum shell. It emulates the undersized shell concept that we see from companies like Sonar or British Drum Company. It allows for easy tuning and tensioning. They all have the Master Tune lugs, which are a lower profile lug, but they also have a locking mechanism on the inside to help the drum stay in tune. And the Halo mounting system. And this is something that has seen constant refinement. This is a minimal contact mount, but it also has this little knob there that allows you to sort of dial in a little bit of compression if you want. If the drum is ringing a little bit too much for you, just a twist of that knob will provide some shell compression and inhibit the resonance just a bit. Now, the difference is very minimal between wide open and closed, but it's there if you need it. They wanted to optimize the airflow vents. So where they put the vents, it's different on each drum, which this goes a little bit beyond my level of expertise, but that just gives you a glimpse into how seriously they take that. And then there's the SAS ring system. Mapex is able to make a strong shell that doesn't require reinforcement hoops, but there are sonic properties to reinforcement hoops that some people really, really like. And they really wanted to explore what these rings could do in this Design Lab series. The Equinox drum set. This is a really pleasant surprise. I have to be honest, when I saw the original PDF on this, I was not particularly dazzled because I was thinking, oh, it's going to have a single flange tube, and I really can't think of any time I've played a drum set with single flange tubes that really just move the needle with me. And I am so glad we brought these in and I was able to try these out because these are just great. Now, it has a thicker single flange tube, which is 2.5 millimeter, which is probably why I liked it so much. You could tune them really high and play them sensitively, or tune them low and they have enough roar and grumble to satisfy somebody like me. These were really designed to be very musical, open, dynamic drums. It comes in a nice understated satin flat black. The bass drum is 22 by 16 and the rack toms are 10 by 7 and 12 by 7.5. And the floor toms are 14 by 13 and 16 by 15. It's a maple and padauk shell. Now, padauk is something you really don't see a lot from a lot of the drum companies, so it is a unique tone wood, especially when blended with something we all know and love like maple, and then incorporate all of this innovation with the reinforcement rings. There are no reinforcement rings on the 10, which makes sense because this is a smaller chamber and it probably does best to not have any additional mass on the inside. The 12-inch tom only has the ring on the top, so it's going to give you a little bit more sonic forgiveness, if you will. The floor toms have rings on the top and the bottom, and the bass drum has 3 reinforcement rings. I'm not sure I understand the logic of the 3 reinforcement rings, but I don't need to because the bass drum sounds awesome. Now, most of the time when we do drum set demonstrations up here, we wind up putting a little bit of muffling in the bass drums, and we did not have to do that with any of these kits. They do have a pre-muffled Power Stroke 3 type bass drum head on the batter. That's all it needed. Just sounds great right out of the box. The drum set that I'm sitting behind, this is the Versatus drum set. If I'm honest, this is my favorite looking drum set of the bunch. This is absolutely stunning. Black nickel-plated hardware over what they're calling this peach burl burst finish. It just looks like something I could drink. It's just gorgeous. This is a maple mahogany shell blend, which is that perfect mix of warmth and brightness. The sizes are 22 by 16, 10 by 7, 12 by 7.5, and the floor toms 14 by 13 and 16 by 15. The Versatus set also features that same reinforcement ring profile that we saw in the Equinox drum set. These have my favorite 2.3 millimeter triple flange tubes on the toms as well. I really want to get to know these drums because there's really something unique going on here. I heard them at a higher tuning, I played them at a lower tuning, and they just have incredible response and just nice tonality, very EQ'd, ready to go. The Cherry Bomb, this is a jazz drummer's dream. All cherry shells, which has very focused, classic, vintage vibes, if you will. Incredibly musical and dynamic in a very nice, classy piano black lacquer finish. The Cherry Bomb also is the only set in this line that has a separate configuration. So if you wanted bigger sizes, a 22, 12, 14, 16, they also offer that configuration. And these have 6-ply rack tom, 6-ply floor tom, 8-ply bass drum, 2.3 triple flange tubes, and they have fiber skin diplomats on these toms, which are just lush. Very, very nice. It's pretty remarkable to me that all of this innovation has been going on right under many people's noses. It's also easy for me to overlook. I mean, this presentation itself, it serves as a stark reminder of what a force Mapex is in the drum world and how they should be considered a top-tier manufacturer of drums. The reason I've come to this conclusion, aside from everything I've just told you, is I'm on year 26 of drum retail, and I have tuned more drums, played more drums, seen more drums than most people. But what's most important is that I've learned from drummers, drum designers, drum builders, marketers, most importantly, customers, people like you. I've learned about what works for you, what doesn't work in situations that really matter the most, like live performance or recording situations. I can confidently say that we are in the best era of drum manufacturing. All the brands that we deal with are making the best drums they ever have, and it's just a great time to have all of these options. It's just amazing. The most important thing, as always, is the sound. Did you like how they sounded? Did you not like how they sounded? We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. So please let us know. Allow me to take this moment to ask you to please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and hit that get notified bell. This actually really helps us, and it allows us to bring more exciting, informative content to you. We hope you enjoyed this video. We hope that it was enlightening, entertaining, and hopefully you got something out of it. And thank you for watching. We appreciate the support. We will see you in the next one.